Hey, everybody. Welcome. My name is Joseph Goodman of Goodman Games. I'm going to pass the baton to Chris to introduce himself.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Doyle. I am the director of 5e development and design for Goodman Games, and I'm gonna pass the baton to Matt.
Hello, my name is Matt Hildebrand. I am the art director for Goodman Games. And one of the things I get to do as an art director is work with artists. And we happen to have one here today. So I'm going to pass it on to Chuck. Can you give a little introduction, Chuck, if you don't mind?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Chuck Whelan. I've been doing work with Joseph and Goodman Games for I don't know, it's getting to be about probably over 20 years now.
Wow.
Yes.
I guess it has been that long. Wow. And you're not even AI. You're like a real human. It's hard to tell sometimes, but we animated him really well today.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in full high definition today.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody, this is the Denizens crowdfunding, and obviously a live stream related to it. But we have other titles that are part of this crowdfunding, and one of them is How to Write Even Better Adventures, which has a lot of amazing content, and we'll talk about the essays that are in there in a little bit, by many sort of A-list game designers from the modern times and from sort of the olden times. But we brought Chuck on today because Chuck did the illustrations, well, really all the illustrations in this book and the previous ones, How to Write Adventure Modules That Don't Suck, and they're hilarious. Chuck is super funny, a great illustrator, great cartoonist, and Matt and Chuck and us, we're just going to chat about some of the stuff he's worked on lately and what he's been up to.
Yeah, that's been one of the most fun projects I worked on, I think, of everything is the How to Write Adventure Modules book. Yeah, the cover ones were the most difficult because you gave me a fairly specific brief on that, and you were like, they had to look like they're sort of good, bad ideas, I guess. So,
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of a tricky one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I sort of did, and you wanted it to look like somebody had doodled on their
like their notebook, their composition
notebook. Yes.
Yeah.
What do you call? Is there a proper name for those? They're very prevalent here in the UK. We grew up with slightly different notebooks, but that.
Yeah, I think composition. Yeah,
composition books. Yeah, composition books. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Yes.
I mean, just to be clear, nobody uses these anymore. Both my kids use laptops in school.
Right.
This is officially defunct, but we all get it.
Right.
Yes. Well, we're very old school here. Yes. So.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Yep. But you're right, Chuck. That is routine. Like if Joe will write a joke or a description for something that he wants, and usually he follows that up with, or just let Chuck make something up because he's really funny. So, so yeah, I think on the cover we did give you some specific instruction. But the good thing is you're going to be able to let loose a little bit when it comes to the inside of this thing, and kind of listen to the muse and be able to go your own way.
Yes. So I just read through all the articles, and I was very impressed I was like, wow, these guys really know what they're talking about. There's so many things to spin out on like ideas. So I just sort of read through it and make notes as I go, and that's and then not hard.
Nice. And I think we are going to talk about the contents of this, which Chris knows intimately well.
Oh yeah.
But for the time being, I think that the good thing is this is kind of a second book in a series, right? And Chuck has been the illustrator for both, at least the covers for both, and they're made to look like they go together on the shelf, right? They're made to work with each other, because I think you can correct me, Joe. I don't know how many printings the first book has been through, but it's been a ton.
It's up to 5. The 5th is almost gone. Like, it's crazy.
It is. And it is, I feel like it's one of the books that people see at the con booth, like right away. It draws eyes and people head right toward it. And once they read the title and what they see a little bit of the contents, they're sold, right?
Yeah, that is very true. Working conventions and you have that prominently displayed on the table, you can see people come from other booths and from across the aisle. They will make a beeline for it and start flipping through the pages and opening it. So it's awesome.
That is awesome.
So Chuck, if I remember correctly, you brought some sketches and some stuff you're working on for the next book here.
Yes, hopefully you can see them. Let me see if I can switch my camera here.
That's great.
There we go. Okay, so these are my original sketches. So you can see a bit of my process. I don't know. I've got a copies of the the finished results as well, so you can sort of see how they
Nice.
translate. There we go.
Oh, that's
Mm.
awesome.
The
Yeah.
internet
What do you
troll.
call that one, Chuck?
Yeah, the internet troll. Yeah, I
That's
gave them all.
great.
I gave them all little names as I went. Yeah, and I've sort of, done them so that they can be sort of stickers or whatever. I think we're doing the approach on the cover. Like there was a German edition that you sent me of the cover where they'd sort of solved some of the problems, because it was like the original cover. You have like the composition book, and then there was like a gold foil. I don't know if that was just the Kickstarter, but the gold foil inlay of the doodles on
Yeah.
quite it was quite hard to read what was going on. That's probably one reason people are picking up. They're like, what is going on here?
Yeah, so this is
Uh,
the American gold foil. This was the
Yes.
Italian version where they basically followed the same model, but our German translator made it more like stickers. He's like
Yes.
spot gloss on a matte finish, which actually really works, and we completely stole his idea for the
Yes.
cover design for the sequel.
Yes, I think they solved some of the design problems there. So
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Wait, so Truck, I have to ask you, in the past, you have sent us a drawing and then like 3 different punchlines, this punchline, that punchline, and they're all funny. And I'm always like, oh, which do I pick? Like, they're all hilarious. Do
Okay.
you already have like a bunch of punchlines picked out for your internet troll or any of these?
I didn't really do them with captions particularly. Yeah, people, I'm open to captions. Sometimes things have captions. I just sort of gave them names here. This one, I called it the gelatinous cube, gelatinous cube, as opposed to gelatinous. It's got a nice.
Actually, you know what you should do? I was just at Gary Con. Everybody's into chia berries these days.
Oh yeah,
Brendan's not on the stream right now, but they kept serving us at the buffet this like chia coconut thing. And I tried it one day and it like wasn't congealed right and it tasted terrible. But Brendan got it the day before and it was really good. I think we need some chia jokes in here.
Yes.
Wow.
Gelatinous chia pudding or something.
Yes. Well, yeah. So the next time I'll order the chia.
Chia pudding.
The chia pudding. Yeah.
Somebody in the
was
chat said chia mera. That's actually great.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Who is that guy?
Let's see now. There's a couple of others here.
Good
This
point.
one I liked. It's
Oh yeah, that's great.
This is the imitation handbag.
That's hilarious. That's
I was
hilarious.
thinking, and I did, instead of DG, I've got GG there.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
great.
Well, I was thinking, what else could a mimic be? It does, like, they can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, why not a nice handbag? They're popular these days.
So self-cleaning handbag with that tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what I think that's one that didn't make the cut. That was a pirate ship in a bottle, but I decided that was too much detail for the size that I was doing. I couldn't quite work that one out. I don't know. Some of the ideas come and go.
The beholder's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
The cigarette.
the stoner beholder. What was the red eye of the beholder? I think I gave him a hat in the final.
That looks just like Brendan. Brendan used to wear one of those like. Yes.
I quite like this one as well. This was the
Oh God.
I call that one brain drain.
After the classic intellect devourer, right? That's
devourers. Yeah,
you devour so many brains, and eventually you have to.
You gotta go.
Yeah. It's just nature. It's just nature.
Yes, I don't know. Some of them are better than others as they go. Okay, this one that's the Dragon Slayer.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I feel like we should do some sort of caption contest, like on the campaign, post.
Yeah.
Chuck, some of those are so funny and so much room for interpretation, like the internet troll, the intellect devourer, and we should I don't know, people vote on their favorite caption or something, and the winner wins something. I don't know. That's
a great idea. I mean, we did do that before, didn't we? I remember I did this one with like Krampus one year, and I couldn't really think of a good caption.
That's right. Yeah, that was years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I
That's
don't know. Yeah,
good.
so sometimes the picture comes first, sometimes the caption comes first. It sort of depends. Yes. Yeah, she's Miss Dungeon 74. And then she I guess her date is C3PO'd here. So he's had enough of being second fiddle. All right.
Is that the
So,
gun?
yeah,
Wait, that's the gun from Aliens, right?
I believe it's close on that. Close on that. Yes, yes, yes. Well,
I just rewatched
that's
that.
well spotted. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
great. You're crossing the streams on that one.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yes. Usually, if you do a bit of a mashup, then you're okay. You know.
That's awesome.
Yes. So those are some of those that I've done. Yeah. Yeah.
And Chuck, I don't know that everybody realizes this, but the original DCC core rulebook, you did all those random cartoons that are sprinkled throughout, and that was way back when. And I remember reading, I think I was reading the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. I was reading some like old, maybe it was Dragon Magazine, old TSR stuff, and emailed you, and you came up with like so many just hilarious, one-liners.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh
that were
yeah. No.
sprinkled
Yeah.
throughout that core rulebook.
Yes. I was very well. I'd already been working with you for a while on some of the covers for the early Dungeon Crawl classics and things. But yes, that was another. That was another of my favorite projects. Because I had quite a blank slate, and you said, and I used to love all those sort of Tom Wham cartoons.
Yeah.
In the early D&D books, I would look at all those. I'd probably spend more time looking at the cartoons than I.
Yeah.
It's hard to sort of get that the right humor, and like also because, well, I mean, there really is quite a deep well of humor in there, but the aspects of gaming, and then together you and we worked on a game, sort of game about gaming with cards.
That's right,
I did a
Geek
whole bunch
Wars.
of,
Man, that was
Geek
way
Wars.
back. That was like
That was
20
way,
years
way
ago.
back.
Yeah, back when Gibby Games published card games for a brief period. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a lot of it's about the humor of gaming, the sort of meta aspect between the one thing and the other. But also I like to do just sort of, there's sort of two aspects, just sort of pure fantasy where you're like in the world, or the sort of meta aspects, and those aspects of it. Yeah.
That's great. Very cool. Yeah, I was just looking the other day, like I have a collection here of heavy metal magazines, right? And I have a collection of Mad magazines. And I am trying to I thought the other day, and I think Brendan and I might have talked about this at one point, like which one has inspired my gaming more over the course of time?
Yeah.
I think like a good fantasy game is like a combo of both of those things, right? Some like super cool heavy metal imagery and also a good sense of humor, right?
Oh yeah, I used to look at those very intensely. Heavy metal, definitely, and Mad Magazine. We would get that. I would look at that too. And we had a lot of cartooning in England, and I really liked. Well, it's a couple of things like Judge Dredd. I really liked, and I really liked sort of some of the underground comics, particularly the Freak Brothers, Gilbert Shelton.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Things that I really liked a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Cool.
There's a comment in the chat. So Mad Magazine and Far Side, I love them both, and heavy metal. I got my kids a subscription to Mad Magazine when they were like 5 or 6. It turns out there's a lot of words in there you're not supposed to say in kindergarten, but I still feel like, so what? Like, it's okay. It's great. Both my kids are obsessive readers of Mad Magazine, and I bought them the 3-volume, whatever, the Far Side, like complete collection set, where they collected them all.
Yeah.
And my older son has read through it 3 times, and my younger son is starting to read through it, and he doesn't get half the jokes. And I get questions about like, what does entomologist mean? But it's educational.
Yeah, my son read all those at school through the school libraries.
Yes. That's awesome. It's good stuff.
Michael Curtis says he was more of a cracked man himself. Well, that's not a lot of people are man enough to admit it. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's like an imitation leather handbag. I mean, come on, you gotta get the real thing.
No, there's some of the best stuff was practice. He moved to crack, didn't he? The guy, he was quite cartoony. He did the long flappy feet.
Don Martin.
Don Martin, yes.
Yeah, he was great.
He sort of angrily left Mad and went to crack.
That'll teach him.
Oh, I didn't know that story. That's hilarious.
So, I'm not sure. Oh yeah, I have to fact check me on that.
I believe you. I do. All right, coolio. Well, we've let Chris be silent this whole time.
Just enjoying the art.
Nice. Nice.
So
All right. Yep. And I saw Elena put a couple of pieces of art up there too. But I do think that we have some other folks to talk to, and I know it's bright and early in California, and Chuck's in the studio and ready to work. So,
Yes, yes, I've got some work to get on with here. Yes.
not that I have any insider knowledge on what you might have on your drawing table at this point, but we do appreciate you jumping on, Chuck, and showing some of that art, and I can't wait to see all the internal pieces as well for this book once it comes to fruition.
Oh yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it's always so great to work on this stuff. Yes.
Thanks for joining us, Chuck. It's good
Yeah,
to hang
thanks,
out
Chuck.
with you. Hey, everybody, we're back. So we traded out Chuck for Brendan LaSalle and Michael Curtis. You guys want to introduce yourselves just in case somebody out there doesn't know who you are?
Sure. I'm a game designer and outreach manager for Goodman Games. Brendan LaSalle at your service.
And I am the director of product development for Dungeon Crawl Classics, and half of my voice is on the floor of Lorimore A in the Grand Geneva. We just came back from Gary Con, and it was very loud, and it was a lot of fun. But I'm still waiting for my voice to show up.
It was loud. It was fun, but it was loud. My ears were ringing one of those nights. It was just small rooms with a lot of noise.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think remind me, guys, we had two things to talk about today: how to write even better adventures, and then I think Chris and Mike, you guys were going to preview some of the submission guidelines that backers are going to see for those who want to submit their monsters, right?
Yep.
Cool.
That's the plan.
So Chris, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I know you had some notes and you're going to talk about various things for how to write even better adventures and so on.
Yeah, and I just remembered the OneNotes I don't have pulled up, so that's gonna be a
So
problem.
let's
But
kill some
anyway,
time.
yeah. So I'll do that when someone else is talking, probably. But anyway, so
Okay.
yeah, so we want to talk about. So we have 24 different designers for essay writers, I guess you would call, for this product. So that is jam-packed with just amazing content from industry luminaries, many of them very recognizable names. Of course, we've got a bunch of Goodman Games folks in there as well. We like to consider ourselves industry luminaries to an extent.
Absolutely.
As well. So yeah, Brendan, definitely. So and we have just a bunch of different topics. And one of the cool things that we did that we're going to talk about a little bit after I pull my list up is we asked each essay writer to actually it's funny, we didn't even know what to call this when we were actually putting the call out for these essays, so we called it the something else. So we asked each person to, since it's a system neutral book, to create something else with their essay that kind of supports what they're talking about and everything. And apparently we discovered pretty quickly people love flowcharts. So we have lots of flowcharts in this book, but we have some of them are artwork, some of them are detailed encounters, some of them are NPCs, some are monsters. So you're gonna get a bunch of different things you're gonna get the essay.
Chris, I'm going to offer a little context that will hopefully clarify to something else. What we asked was for an essay, and it's giving abstract advice can be hard for people to digest. So we asked everybody, hey, give us an essay, give us your advice to aspiring game designers, adventure authors, etc., and then give an example, apply that advice in some way, and that's the something else. And in the first book, we had them all design an encounter, but it's not always an encounter. So that's where we said it can be an encounter, an adventure, an illustration, or something else. And it sounds like we got the gamut, but people apply their advice in a way you can hopefully learn from, and it was a flow chart or a whatever.
Exactly.
And that's the something else. Yeah.
So, and we were really, really kind of excited to see the different things that people kind of came up with, and also the different topics. We also tried very hard to make sure we didn't have topics overlap this go round. Still, there's a little bit of overlap because when you get 24, crazy industry luminaries together to talk about, writing adventures and encounters, naturally you're going to get some carryover and everything. So, and you're going to get some overlap. So, so that's definitely happening. So do we want to hear from a list of some of the folks that are contributors? Do we want to? I know it's on the website and everything, but should we?
Yeah, just in case somebody missed it. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I'm just going to go down my list here. They're in no particular order. I've always wanted to say that in live TV, no particular order. So Jerry Grayson has an article called "How to Write an Adventure That Won't Drain Your Soul." Okay, so there we go. And that one includes as the something extra a sample adventure outline, "The Black Wound of Tenebris." So you're getting a whole adventure outline with that. Folks might know this name, Harley Stroh. Anybody hear of Harley?
Is he
He's
the guy
going to
who's
be
always got a
sending in his
broken arm?
essay in about 2 weeks. So, but when he does, he tells us. I'm kidding. He actually already sent it in. He's actually, his essay is called "Tropes for the Writer's Toolbox," and his includes a sample encounter called "Sword of the Sea King," which is I want
cool.
that adventure right now. Actually, I want a whole adventure called "Sword of the Sea King." Let's see, and I'm gonna do a lot of the talking, folks, to give Mike a rest with his voice. So it's not that I'm trying to dominate the conversation here. It's just I'm trying to give my compatriot a blow over there. So
Appreciate it.
Sean Merwin, might recognize him. He's done work for a whole bunch of different companies. So he has a whole essay talking about box text and a necessary evil question mark. And I can really relate to that, and I know Mike
I can
relate
totally
to that.
relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
box text is one of those things when you're in the position that Mike and I are in about you really have to do it, but it's probably the worst part that people send in because they send it way too long and it's too flowery and all that kind of stuff. So he gives some great suggestions on
I
how
had
to
a long conversation with Eric Mona at the bar at GaryCon about box text.
just this past weekend. See, it's still an issue, people.
What was the TSR adventure he was talking about? He had run some adventure and he was telling me like, yeah, it had like a full page of box text, and he was telling me how he was like, changing it, not actually reading the full page. Like it was this whole conversation about the box text and that adventure kind of like took away from the table experience, although it might be good writing,
Yep.
I totally agree on that. So
yeah.
Yeah, and especially at a convention too. Mike was mentioning how he left his voice on the floor of Lorimer A. And that's a problem if you've got 3 paragraphs of read aloud text and you're trying to read it in a very noisy room at a convention. That's even more of a problem. So, so we have an essay by someone might have heard of Ed Greenwood. You might have heard he's probably more known for a small campaign setting that he's put together over the last 50 years or so. And he's got an essay called "The Lore of Mystery." If I recall, he was the very first writer that we recruited for this, if I recall, way
That
back.
does sound right.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
saw him at Gamehole Con like 2 years ago, just randomly, and started talking to him. That he came out of that. He was at GaryCon this weekend. He came by our booth. We sell vintage novels at our booth. Basically, we all love going to bookstores, and you don't ever see this if you buy your stuff online. But at the cons, our booths, especially Gen Con and GaryCon, have tons of vintage novels that we go to use bookstores. We buy them up, then we basically resell them at cost. The next con, Ed came by and bought, I don't know, 20 or 30, maybe 40 vintage novels. They had to get him a box to carry it out with because he bought so many vintage novels. He basically cleared out like half the booth. And then a couple of our like RPG publications too. But he was like very excited to see all the vintage novels.
Nice.
Very cool. Very cool. We have an essay by Sean K. Reynolds. Folks probably recognize that name back from the 3rd edition days, Pathfinder. And his essay is going to talk about making monsters interesting, the tripod of monster design. Now, this is obviously perfect for the Dungeon Denizens crowdfunding here. And this is a fascinating essay. I loved it, reading it, everything. And he actually provided a couple of brand new monster write-ups that will not appear in Dungeon Denizens 2, but they will appear in this book. And basically where he takes some of his practices and kind of puts them into play. So that was actually really good too. And like I said, Mike and I have just have yeah, there are days where we have the best job ever, where we're reading essays from all of these folks, and we're just kind of like, yep, yep, nope, ooh, never thought about that one. And of course, we have written our own essays, Mike and I, and Mike, maybe he can struggle and actually say a few words on his. He actually did one. It's called "Don't Lock the Dungeon Door." So Mike, do you want to say a couple words about it?
One of the things that I have learned in my development time is so often there are designers who will they literally put an obstacle road in between them and the fun, because the reason we're all going to get around to it is have fun at the table. And the biggest thing I've come across is like, well, the party approaches the front door to the dungeon, whether that's an actual dungeon or a laboratory, like, and all the fun stuff is on the other side, all the monsters to fight, all the problems to solve, all the puzzles to thing, and the door, you have to make a DC 10 check in order to open the door. What happens if the thief fumbles that roll? Or, and then you're all staring at each other like, well, the fun's on the other side of that, isn't it? Oh,
Sorry.
or you have to. I've created a new term. I'm calling it check locking. So it's like if you fail your check lock, whether that's a pick lock check or if it's a bend bars, lift gates, or what have you. So constantly there should always be multiple keys for every lock, whether that's a preferred this actual lock or a metaphorical lock. So I delve into that and examining the idea of being able to don't let realism get in the way of actually having all the fun. So that's the point of my description. No. And
Nice.
I will have a little example of like little teeny thing, like maybe one room encounter. Like here's the thing, and here's 3 ways to get around it. So
Nice.
Yeah. Oh,
That's great.
perfect. And mine I decided to write. So I did, the title of my essay is "A Dungeon Ecology from an Ecologist." So most of you guys are aware that in my previous life, I was an ecologist, and I actually used to do science and all sorts of biology. And I always remembered back in the day, there was the old Dragon magazine, Ecology of whatever monster.
I love those articles.
And I
Yeah.
actually looked them up. There was over 100 of those. It started back in first
Really?
edition, and it went all the way to 3.5 edition. It started in something like issue number 70, whatever, and went all the way to issue 3 something, I think, and everything. So I was partially inspired by that. But basically, I took I always had this vision too in my head of taking the old classic for your Bio 101 class in high school, where you saw the food chain, where you saw the little fish eating the next size fish, eating the next size fish, and then the shark eating all of them. But of course, that's antiquated. That's old school. So the modern folk now talk what's called dungeon webs, where you actually have all these complicated interactions of this eats this, but that eats that, and this eats this over here. So I did a whole article based on that, and then I actually created a piece of an illustration showing all those lines and basically taking a dungeon and actually creating an ecology web based on that. And basically where you've got the you've got the rot grubs and the green slimes and the shriekers at the bottom, and then you've got the giant rats eating those things, but then the goblins eat the giant rats, and the ropers eat that, and then the dragon eats everything. So basically, so that was kind of the thought there too. And I also kind of flipped it a little bit too, talking a little bit about doors like Mike talked about, but I put it kind of in the context of traps and things. Like if you put like for example, if you put a trap at the very beginning of your dungeon, at the front entrance of your dungeon, which makes sense, you would want to do that. But you have to keep in mind, if the inhabitants of the dungeon are coming and going, like how do they get around the trap? It's like
Yes.
they have to have a way around it or a way to disable it, and the owlbear doesn't have thieves tools. So how's the owlbear get in and out to like this? So it's just things like that where a little bit of it is tongue-in-cheek, and you would never apply all these things to it, but sometimes, in my opinion, adding a little bit of this just makes a dungeon a little bit better. And then sometimes you go back and look at some of the old classic dungeons and just how much that they ignored dungeon ecology entirely, and it's laughable. So
Yeah.
so that was the gist that I did there.
You made me think of remember when we were kids? Now it's the food pyramid. When we were kids, it was the food. What was it? It was food something.
It was the food. What was it? Was it a pyramid back then? But yeah, it's a food pyramid
It was
now. It's that the pyramid's much different now.
Yeah, you got to eat so many cups of milk and so many pieces of bread,
dairy, and then your cheeses, and then your breads, and then your meats, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, very similar to that.
I feel like you need to do one of those for the dungeon. Like you got to eat 6 dire rats a day, and
essentially
gelatinous.
Essentially, that's kind of what it is. So yeah, to an
In my
extent.
school, it was the food chain. It was eat or be eaten. None of
Yeah.
that.
The food pyramid of death. It's like you are predator or you are prey. It's like,
That lead dog, the view never changes. That was it.
And now I want to throw it over to Mr. Brendan LaSalle, and he wrote an article, an article called "Playtesting as Design and Lifestyle." So we're gonna get some life coach updates here from Brendan regarding playtesting. And this is probably one of the more important essays in the book, because when we did a couple weeks ago at our DCC Indie Summit, we did when I say we, several of us on this panel, we actually did a how to write, where do you get inspiration from adventures, and we opened it up to questions in the chat, and folks brought up playtesting right off the bat. I think it was the second question that came up, and we could have done an entire hour on playtesting. So so instead of listening to a bunch of chuckleheads talking about playtesting for an hour, you can instead read Brendan's essay all about it.
One chucklehead, the ramblings.
Yeah.
One-stop chuckle over your fingertips.
So tell us about playtesting, Brendan.
So I wanted to really underscore the importance of playtesting, in general for anything that you do. But I really talked about sort of like, a practice that I have adopted, which is where I will take a very basic version of the adventure, basically a flowchart. I'm one of the flowchart guys, like, basically a flowchart, and then running your adventure off of that, and like doing that several times and allowing that to actually be a part of the design process, and like make the decisions about the final just from the playtest, rather than having an entirely completed adventure and then doing playtesting to kind of make corrections and fine tune it. I try to do both, but it's worked very well for me over the years, where I'll have like a basic idea and I'll run it and run it and run it until, and every time making changes, trying things, experimenting, cutting things out and seeing how it goes without them. Actually, A Hole in the Sky was the first one I did this with. When I ran Hole in the Sky, like the first time I did it, I ran it and I was like, oh, it wasn't very good. Let me, kind of throw it back. And then I got into the habit of every time I did it, trying something different and swapping monsters out for this or whatever. So by the time I actually was ready to actually write it, I had run it 30 times. Now, mind you, I was doing conventions heavy at the time, so I had a lot of time, and it was the only DCC adventure in my repertoire. So that was what everyone was getting from me. So I had the opportunity to try it a number of times in a number of different ways, and I found that a really good way to work, at least for me. At least for me. One of the things I point out there in the essay is like, try it, but don't, realize that this is sort of me sharing my process, and that, take what you can from it and then apply it to your own, but I hope people try it. I hope people try to work that way and see what they get. I think it comes with some amazing built-in results.
So I have to ask, Brendan, I think a lot of people feel that they have to have the adventure complete before they run it. And it sounds like you're saying you actually have like options that you're thinking about, and then based on the flow of the game session, you might pick A or B as you get to the third encounter. Is that kind of right?
Even just make a decision at the last minute where you're like, oh, you know what? Actually, I think it'd be more fun if I did this, especially like reskinning monsters. Like I do that the whole time, and I ran an adventure this weekend, and it had kind of a dull encounter. And I was like, oh, what if it takes place in a museum where things are becoming animated? And I was like, oh, so I reskinned this thing at the last minute from being sort of like stuffed animals to being cross-section glass displays of these animals that you could see their interiors on. So they had like their left half each and such. Did that at the last minute. I was like, oh, that's so much more fun. Like these, we crazy half monsters that are coming at you now from the original. So yeah, I try to talk about, and I have an illustration there. Start with a very basic outline, run it a few times before you think you're ready to run it. And you can do it. You can absolutely do this. And then just allow that to be a part of the actual design process. And then once you have it written, you also have to play test it, to check your final version of it. And even more importantly, make friends with other game designers and swap adventures and try them out for each other, run them for each other, because there's invariably things that are in your head that you are adding to
Yes.
your adventure. You don't even realize you're doing it. You know what I mean? But but that other adventure will be like, hey, there doesn't seem to be a way to get to level 2. And you were like, oh yeah, I was just kind of like whatever happens to be, So
Yes, whatever you do,
That's
don't make that a
awesome.
locked door with only one key. Whatever you do,
Mhm,
so
mhm.
make sure there's at least one, two.
Mike's
or three
right,
ways
and
to
I've
go.
done that.
Yes,
You know what I'm saying? And had to get checked,
We all
before.
have.
So
We all have that. I mean, that's fascinating because that is so not the way I write or design an adventure. I design the entire adventure. I outline things and everything, but I don't. I make sure I have a really good idea, and then like I said, then that playtesting step is definitely an after step. It's not a during step, I guess I would
Yeah.
call it. So, but it's a great perspective to think about. It gives you something different to think about it, especially when you've been doing something one way for a very long time. These
Yeah.
essays just make you think about something a little bit differently, or even just think about it. How many of the folks out in the chat have even thought about read aloud text or box text? You probably don't even think about it until you're a designer or you're editing it or you're trying to cut words or something. So,
And Brendan, you are in the perhaps unusual position of having run literally thousands of con games. I mean, you hit, I don't know what it is, 7, 8, 9, 10 cons a year, probably more, run 5, 6, 7 games at every con, maybe more. Because I know I've talked to you before and you're like, I got this great adventure. I've run it 12 times. It's just about ready for publication. It's like, you really get it to the point where it's funny to me. Some adventures read really well, but don't necessarily play well. Yours read well, and they've been so thoroughly tested that they just always flow really well at the table.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a design thing. And one of the things I point out is that you can't always do it. Sometimes someone gets sick and you have to step up and say, hey, can you write this adventure? You have 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
You can't always work this way. But when you have the luxury of time and the ability to reach out to playtesters, I think even if you just do it as an exercise, I think it can be really helpful.
yeah. That's great
It's good advice.
actually. Yeah. So even just to you're right. A lot of people are not writing adventures to have them published. They're writing them for their own group. And
Yeah.
it's like they're probably going to run it once and then they're never going to use it again. So or they might, not, but the idea is to, get it. Yeah, I've even done some things where when my kid was smaller, we've just I wasn't sure if this fight was too powerful. We would literally just sit down and run a combat just to
Yeah.
see hey, is this gonna totally wreck third level characters and everything? So
Yeah.
that's all part of playtesting. So
Oh yeah. The best playtest group is the one where you can say, okay, everybody pause. We're gonna go back and do this room again, but we're gonna have 3 of them. And let's say you've already lost this spell. I'm gonna see how it goes, and so
definitely. Cool.
And actually, you bring up a good point too, because there's a big difference between con games where you're sort of starting fresh every time and a campaign game where your players might be beat up from the last whatever they just did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still bleeding from them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Mike, do you want to? Is there any of the essays that particularly jump out to you as kind of interesting, or made you take a step back and rethink things on your own?
I mean, I learned something new from everyone I read through. I mean, it's quite amazing. It's we get so kind of stuck in our own head sometimes that it's nice to have somebody come along. I mean, I can think some of for example, so Kelsey Dion, she contributed one which was basically it was about keeping your players engaged in it. And she did an excellent job of breaking it down, like where the 3 major parts where people disengage in the game are. And it was the original setup, and this actually kind of ties into the box set stuff. I mean, not the box text, the idea of people check out when you have 8 sentences of, and there's a door in the east wall, and this, so she very much tighten things up. I know personally, I like 3 sentences is kind of my sweet spot for, box text. If I can get all the highlights on it and then and she was like 4, so we're right in the ballpark, not 8, and then, and then once, and then next to the situation of, I mean, if every room you open it is like a goblin with a knife and he charges at you, I mean, that gets tiresome very fast. And then she also dives into the resolution thing. She points out very well is that especially in initiative based games you actually spend more time waiting to play than you actually play.
Yeah.
You know, just if you have 6 players and everything, you're only playing out of every combat, you're only playing 1/6 of the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, how to keep things moving fast. So, you know, so players don't check out from that. And she was one of the ones who includes a very handy flow chart where she breaks down the steps and like, is this working? Well, then no, then you know, are the players checking out because you're sitting there reading 10 pages of box text and everything? I'm like, if that's working, no, then go back here and this is the step that you do and everything. So yeah, so I mean, even I picked it. There was some of the ways she set up some of the encounters. Was like, oh yeah, that's actually to have the the monster come in and there's another monster. You know, like they're running, like slam the door, like they're coming. Like, how do you respond to that situation? Like, I don't know. You know, so some good stuff to be found in there.
Nice. Yeah, that is definitely true about the initiative, especially when you're playing with younger kids and there's a group of them and they're just there. They just want to swing that sword and hit that goblin.
Yeah.
And you know, and I remember I used to run a lot of games at our local 4-H, and it was like that. There was a group, and unfortunately the club was so popular, we had like 7, 8 kids at a table. And these kids had a hard time focusing. And that's part of the reason why their parents had them there. They wanted them to focus and do, interact and everything. And I remember this one little kid, he just wanted to hit something with his great sword. And like the whole night went by and he never got the hit. He rolled a couple of dice, but he never actually scored a hit. And he was at the end of it, he was so frustrated and so upset, borderline tears, that he didn't get to actually hit something with his greatsword, because exactly what you just said, there was 8 of them at the table, and it's really like you're only getting 1/8 of a chance, and it's almost like, oh my god, this is my big turn. It's like, oh please let me hit this turn, and oh boy, another 4. It's like,
Poor kids.
very, very true. And in that case, you probably need to adjust the game and run the game a lot quicker in regards to what you would maybe normally do, because also those 4-H meetings had a very defined start and stop time. Like, we couldn't stay later. They were literally closing the building down, so we had to be done. So yeah, know your audience, know your location, your environment, and everything when you're doing these things. So
good advice.
I guess to sum it all up is there is definitely something for everybody in this book, with 24 different contributors, from just a whole suite of topics and everything, and all these extra things. It's like there's a lot of really cool content in this book.
And we may still have 1 or 2 more contributors trickle in. There's one with a health problem who will hopefully finish his essay soon. Stuff like that. So by the time we're getting it to the press, that reminds me, I need to check in on him. But yeah, let me make a note here. But yeah, there's still a couple more that might roll in, and it's an amazing wealth of advice.
Completely.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you've been doing a lot of talking though? Is there anything that jumps out either for you, Chris?
So, I think the monster design one, and partially probably because I've been living in monsters lately because of Dungeon Denizens 2. I thought that was fascinating, and I didn't even realize that Sean K. Reynolds actually was one of the contributors to the 3rd edition Monster Manual. I was kind of like stepped back, and I was like, whoa! I'm like, oh my gosh! It's like now I kind of get the essay a little bit more. But he has this tripod rule of monster design where it says, give monsters something interesting to do. Number 1, when they attack. Number 2, when they defend. And number 3, when they're in a non-combat situation. So that basically you're making every single monster have probably about 3 different interesting facets or abilities or traits or something that could really kind of affect the game. And I thought that was actually pretty useful. And thinking back to looking literally at hundreds of monsters over the last couple of years for the Dungeon Denizens books we've done, that's solid advice that kind of put yourself in that space and think about it that. And then he also has this thing called the hot potato rule, which again is one of those things where Brendan's probably done this before. But like, if you're at the game table and you've got a really cool monster, and the monster's got a really awesome ability, and you can't wait to do it. And then the monster's got a bunch of minions that are just there to run interference or whatever. But then like the characters cast Hold Person or something on the monster and takes him out, and he can't use his cool thing. And you're kind of like, oh man, he can't use the cool thing. It's like, well, they don't know. They're not reading your notes. Hot potato roll, just give that cool ability to one of the minions. They don't know, and then try and come up with a backstory on why the minion might have it. Maybe the minion was practicing spellcasting on the side or something and had this latent spellcasting ability, whatever. And basically then use that ability. Don't let it, kind of hamstring you on not using it. And I was like, I think we've all been there before behind the gem screen. When we've done that, we've just not actually like put a name to it and actually kind of thought that all the way through. So,
It's
Brendan,
a
have
great
you ever
name.
done that? Have you done
Oh,
It
that?
is a
I,
great
I
name.
absolutely have.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've gone further. I've done that with plot stuff. I've had them accidentally like kill the big bad who had the information, and then like suddenly the NPC, he was actually the big bad all along, and he's got the information for the next thing. I've absolutely done that.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I've heard people do that back in my RPGA days. I remember doing my rounds, checking on all the game masters and everything. I remember walking up to like one of the game masters, like, hey, everything going okay? I was like, yeah, we're doing great. We're fighting the beholder. I'm like, awesome. And then I walk out of the room and I'm walking down the hall. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no beholder in that adventure. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And sure enough, he's like, yeah, it's like they needed a beholder. And it was like afterwards I talked to him. And again, the players, they had a great time. They have no idea that there wasn't a beholder in the adventure, but like the game master like took the temperature of the table and was like, you know what, we're gonna spice things up a little bit here. So, and really, I mean, if you've ever fought a beholder before, like it's amazing. It's an amazing tactical adventure encounter.
Oh yeah. I had a new group, and the DJ for an X-Crawl encounter was a beholder. And afterward, they were like, "Hey, can we beat that thing?" I'm like, "Okay, everybody, we're all going to start at full hit points. Let's just see." One survivor out of 7, like 8-level Pathfinder characters. I was like, "Oh,
Wow,
that's awesome."
That is awesome.
Yes, and a quick comment in the chat, Tim White. I haven't even had enough time to flip through Dungeon Denizens 1 yet. Will this new essay book be available separately post-campaign? Definitely. We want people to buy our books, so they will be available at some point.
Actually, the real question here is that I'm pretty sure Tim told me he's retired now. So what is taking up all your time that you don't have time to flip through our books?
Oh my God.
That's
Yeah. Well,
serious.
There is like 550 monsters in there, so it's
That's
a daunting
true.
task.
Still, it's you got to evaluate your priorities, right? It's
yes.
Monster Day will take a year and a half,
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's this, Tim. We'll sell you a copy of this book as long as you promise to flip through it after you get it. There you go. How's that sound? So.
All right. Now, I think the last topic we had for today was, well, first we should explain backers. We have enough backers in this project that we have unlocked backer submitted monsters, which will be really cool. So, good answer, Tim. So in Dungeon Denizens 1, if you recall, there's an appendix at the back that has bonus monsters. For Dungeon Denizens 2, we're going to do the same thing. If you buy the crowdfunding edition, you pledge for it here, you get the version that has the 16 or maybe more extra bonus pages at the end, and those are going to be backer submitted monsters. So backers will be able to come up with their own ideas, submit their ideas, and Chris and Mike will get to go through them all and sort of pick the best, and those will eventually get published. So I know Chris and Mike, you guys, we're talking about putting the submission guidelines on the crowdfunding page soon, sometime in the next week. And you were going to talk through on today, like, for backers who do want to submit their creations, maybe give them an overview of what the process looks like and what the criteria are and all that stuff.
Sure. So again, I'll do most of the talking to let Mike take a break there, and Mike can just chime in when I forget things and correct me. So our plan is to take the Dungeon Denizens backer submitted monster guidelines live on April 2nd, which is a week from now, I believe. That is Wednesday, April 2nd, and we're gonna have the window where you can submit these monsters to be 3 weeks long. So April 23rd will be when they will be due. So there will be a normal update giving us the rundown of the bracket results that day, and it'll probably be part of that update, unless we're going to do a separate update. We haven't really talked about that internally, if we're going to do 2
we'll
updates.
Figure it out, but yeah, probably one update, because everybody wants to know whether the mech arachnid or the other creature won. So
of course, we don't want to get in the way of that. So
yeah.
So this is basically we want one monster. You can design it in either 5e or DCC. We're going to provide all of the guidelines, the submission guidelines, and they are specific. There's actually some even legal stuff in there that we need. For example, your legal name we need, not the name that you're known in on, YouTube comments and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Although we do
Diego
get a
the
trickle
goat.
out of those.
Unless I
So,
can write a check to Diego the goat, you want to
yeah,
tell us your legal
exactly.
name.
So
Because I've had people
otherwise,
get the check and then they're like, by the way, I can't cash this check. Can you make it out to my legal name? Like, we need to know that
yes.
up front.
And
So,
meanwhile, there's a goat that didn't get his check. So, but
exactly.
yeah, so that's a problem. So
And
we
you can state though, if we publish it, that you want to be published under another name, but
exactly, we've thought of that already, and you'd
Yes.
say, wow, why did you think about these things? It's like, well, because we've done this before. So and we've gone through this. So yes, so that you can have your monster can be credited any way you want, as long as it's rated PG and everything. So don't worry about that. But basically we have some specific guidelines. There's the length of the monster needs to be a certain number of words, because we need them to fit on like one page or less. We will professionally have your monster illustrated. So so please do not send us artwork. We're not looking for art. This is not a submit your best artwork thing. This is submit your best written in words.
But Chris, what if I use all 64 crayons in the box? Can I submit my artwork
That's
then?
probably a problem too. We do not. We need things in, believe it or not, Word.
That's a Matt question right there.
So we need things in Word documents, not PDFs. We need to be able to get in there and easily. You make it sound like, oh, you can just take a PDF and convert it to Word. But when you do that, you lose all the formatting and it gets confusing. And again, if we get hundreds of these, we'd have to do that hundreds of times. And you know what? If you don't follow the rules, we're just going to throw yours to the bottom of the pile, because there will be lots of people who will follow the rules. And that's probably the best advice that we can give. If we tell you that the monster should not be more than 500 words long, make sure your monster is not 500 words long, because if your monster is 650 words long and we told you 500, then instantly you go to the bottom, you go to the back of the queue, and it's a lot harder to get back up to the front of the queue in that regard. So there's a lot of things. We want cool monsters. Oh, we should also mention Dungeon Denizens 2 focuses on lower level challenge monsters. So it's not a requirement for this, but let's just say that we're going to look favorably at monsters that are probably your lower powered monsters. Think about things that probably first, second, third, fourth level characters could probably face or would typically face.
Actually, and I gotta chime in here. Everybody loves epic level, big bad monsters, evil bad guys, etc. But you only get to run those in a game once every what 6 months.
Once.
Your characters have to get to
If
level whatever. Yeah, and then you only get a couple sessions before Jimmy goes off to college or Johnny got a girlfriend and like the group breaks up. I just know from publishing adventure modules over the years, it is always the low levels that sell the best. They get reprinted. They do great. Everybody loves them. We all play lots of levels, 0 through 3, 4, 5, maybe, and then the groups fade or whatever. So part of the goal here is low level monsters and iconic monsters that'll actually get used at your tabletop a lot. That's the goal. So that's why we're approaching this way, because we know from experience. Yeah.
I've had this book since this printing, and there are monsters in here I still have never used. So
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Or
But you
lock.
can always take a bunch of low-level monsters and then, make a mob of them, and then you can, take down 10th level characters. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Game masters will do. And there's things too. We have things where you can make variant monsters, where you can do a little sidebar and say, hey, do you want to, do a ginormous one, a Godzilla-sized one of this monster? Here's how you do it. So, so there's that as well. Did I forget anything, Mike, when I get that rundown?
I think that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Yeah, just the point of this is that everything is there for a reason, and some of those reasons may be to make sure you're paying attention. So
Yes.
that's that. And if you're not paying attention, it's kind of like using all 64 of those crayons. It's just a mess. We easily take one look at that and whoop, okay, we're not going to even look at that. So
Yeah, and it gets, when we deal with all these, and Mike and I will jump on a Zoom call at some point. Usually, I would say if we do 20 monsters like Dungeon Denizens 1, we probably had the top 15 were probably pretty easy to cut apart from. But we got to those last few monsters, it's really splitting hairs between, is it this monster or that monster? Is it this monster or that monster? And a lot of it came down to, well, the formatting was better on this one, or this one is, slightly more evocative, or you know what, we don't have many Fae in this book, so maybe a Fae monster might be something that's a cool idea compared to yet another undead that's on a battlefield. So
I will actually. I will. If you're watching this video, I'll give you some behind the scenes. If you back Dungeon Denizens 1, take a look at Dungeon Denizens 1. And if your monster resembles anything in Dungeon Denizens 1, it's probably not a great submission because we've already done that monster. So yeah.
Yes. And also keep that in mind too. We also get lots of ideas, and there's 350 plus monsters in Dungeon Denizens 2 that you're probably not aware of. That we might get one of your things might come through and be like, well, that's exactly like this one over here, or that's been done before, or that's just, something that, is not. So there's a lot of reasons why we go into and when we end up actually picking, this monster versus that monster. But it's very, very tricky to actually bring it down to a certain number. I mean, we had over 100 submissions last time and we only took 20. So you really have to, you stand above the best and you, like I said, follow those instructions. The less that we have to do on the back end of like fixing your rules, like make sure you've calculated your damage right, make sure you calculated your armor class right and all that. We hate having to do that stuff. Like we have to go into like, well, that AC is really supposed to be 14, not 15. So.
And if it works out, you'll be published in this book. And then as we've seen, often we come back and we're like, hey, we're doing another book. We need 350 more monsters. Will you be willing to contribute? So this can be more than just one monster submission over time. It might grow into us commissioning a number of pieces from you.
Exactly. I think there's 3 or 4 of the designers on Dungeon Denizens 2 were actually backers for Dungeon Denizens 1 that were not in our queue in our ecosystem, and they are now. And they've been doing work for us and everything. And so like I said, it's not a competition. You don't have to send in both rules versions of your monsters. Pick whichever rule system that you are better at. Because we usually get about the same number of submissions, and then we have a team that will convert. If we select your monster, for example, in the DCC version, we will actually take it to our team and convert it for 5e. So you are not required to know both sets of the rules to be able to do this. Just send in one version that you are most comfortable with. Get those rules right in that version, and we'll take it from here. Same with the artwork.
Replied Diego the Goat is this should be a DCC monster because DCC monsters can be used in Weird Frontiers, MCC, XCC. So, but this is a dungeon themed thing. So don't send us your post-apocalyptic mutant that can only exist in post-apocalyptic mutant land. So
Yes.
Denizens. All right. So the one thing that I do want to think about is because this is going to come up in there. If you submit a monster and we do not use it, it remains your monster. So it's like just submitting a monster doesn't give us any right to use it. We had the questions come up last time, in fact.
Yep.
But if we do use it, it's all ours, baby. No, I'm just
actually. Let me clarify that, Mike, because many people don't understand how publishing works. This is not a collective. If we accept your monster, we will buy it from you. We will pay you for it. You make money off of it and we buy it. So that means we will publish it and you can't publish it. We've had a lot of people who are not clear on that fact. So yes, if you submit it to us, if we do not accept it, it remains yours, no entanglements. If we do accept it, we pay you money, and the way transactions work is you give something to us in return, and what you give us in return is the right to publish, the exclusive right to publish your monster. You can't then turn around and make it a free PDF on your website.
Yep. And there'll be a contract involved. And if for some reason you don't want to sign that contract, then we will not purchase your monster. So
Yes.
there's all these things that, if you want your monster in a book, there's these hoops that you have to jump through, I think is the best.
We have enough monsters. We don't need to steal your monster from you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then when we do publish it, Matt's team gets involved and they do really cool art, and you wind up with a really cool illustration of your critter.
And many of the artists sell the originals to the general public. So if you really like the artwork for your monster, there's an outside chance you could run into one of those artists at a convention or on their website or Etsy or something, and you might be able to purchase your artwork for your monster, which is very, very cool, I might add. So.
I definitely facilitated a handful of that for the first Dungeon Denizens books, right? Can you send this message to the artist saying, I love that piece of art, please let me buy it?
I know I got my favorite piece. So.
Nice. Yeah,
somebody wants to buy my manuscripts. I don't know.
Well, I will say we auctioned off Brendan's notebooks at one of those charity events. People, because Brendan actually uses old school composition notebooks and then full scribbles. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's saying much. I think you auctioned off some shorts too, if I'm not mistaken, Joe. So
Jared's swim trunks. That was
yeah.
epic. So we had
Hey,
a
Matt.
I'm just saying.
well, Brendan's notebooks went for way more than the shorts, just to be clear.
I
but
would much rather have Brenda's notebooks, to be honest.
we had an indie publisher deliver stuff to our booth at Gen Con, and somehow there was a miscommunication, and his swim trunks were put in there to be used as padding instead of like bubble wrap. So we all autographed his swim trunks and then auctioned them off later in the show. I still have a photo of Jared's trunks. We got to put that in the
I
yearbook.
have roomed with Brendan. I can confirm sometimes he uses his notebooks for shorts. So
On the page.
There's one other thing we should mention. If you're already back this campaign, you know it, but that's March Monster Madness. So some of you are familiar with this whole March Madness brackets thing. I hear it involves a basketball. That's not my thing. On the other hand, RPGs are my thing. So we are running bracketed monster fights on the Dungeon Denizens page. You can also find it on our website, social media. But if you go to the community tab and look at the latest updates on the Dungeon Denizens 2 page, you will find each day for the next roughly 15, 16 days, a bracketed fight between, today was Mecharactid versus Necromantis. And you get to vote as a background which one you think is going to win the fight. This is old school, who's going to win in a fight, just like you talked about in elementary school when it was Superman versus Batman, except now it's Mecharactid versus Necromantis. And then we're going to update the bracket, and we know what the first 8 matchups are, but we don't know what they are past that. That'll depend on backer voting, and we'll eventually get to the finals, and everybody who participates is entered into a drawing to win a piece of original art. So as Chris and Matt were talking about, Brad McDevitt illustrated a lot of the monsters in Dungeon Denizens 2. He threw in 4 pieces of original illustrations, and it's super cool. There's a picture on the campaign somewhere of this is not just a digital scan. This is original art. You can see around the margins him like testing his paintbrushes with different colors and stuff. So 4 backers will win those pieces of original art, which will ship with their pledge. But anyway, if you haven't already voted, check it out today. Make your vote for the monster that wins the fight, and then every day we'll narrow down the bracket until there's quarterfinals, semifinals, then the finals. Cool. Anything else we forgot to cover, guys, or need to talk about? Oh, hey, Judge Kablooey made it. Hey, Shane. We're just about to wrap up.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Shane, I owe you 2 emails and 3 messages on different platforms.
And yet, Elena, the debates have been fun to read in the comments. People have some really good points on who's going to win in the fight, or like voting just for the art because the art's cool. The Goblin Spawn art was really cool. I actually feel like there weren't enough special abilities for that creature. Like the art was so much cooler than like the write-up. It's one of those illustrations that was just, the visuals were great.
Well,
Sorry,
you do
Mike.
realize the write-up was like 1 sentence, and the entire monster is like numerous sentences, so we couldn't like give all the good stuff. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is
All right,
awesome.
cool.
All right.
I think that's it then, right? If people have any other questions,
Like-
find us on
like,
social media.
follow, jump, do the normal thing.
Oh, yeah.
People with a
Oh
voice.
yeah, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, please. Like the video. Yeah. What else
Give
are we
a
supposed to
thumbs up.
say?
yes,
Give a thumbs
like
up,
the
yeah.
video, thumbs up,
Yeah,
subscribe.
thumbs up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks everybody. And if you have any questions, shoot us
Thank
an email
you.
or find us in the comments. Talk to you later.